Hello and welcome to the Change Game podcast with me, your host, Laura Ordile. I'm here to help you hold on to your sanity and your soul as you move through big change in your life. I'm here to guide you, inform you, and hopefully help you to triumph over trauma and the long list of symptoms that come along with it. This podcast series is to bring knowledge, share stories, and open up conversation around hope for those of you that suffer with the difficulties that present themselves in your life, from diagnosed or undiagnosed trauma. Labeled or not, I know you need help, and so do those that have graciously taken the time to have these conversations with me. So let's get to it. Welcome to the week, Change Gang. I'm super excited to have you here as always, and I have an amazing guest today. Kymberley Carter-Paige is here, and she is a trauma therapist, and so I'm super excited to have a conversation. Thanks for being here with me, Kymberley. I appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me.
So I love that you specialize in trauma, especially for this particular version of the podcast, the Triumphing Over Trauma side of it, because I want to dig in a little bit about the work that you do, why you do it, and maybe some of the stories, if you have any, of how it's really helped people, because that's one of the important things I really want to get out there is we're trying to help people in the best way possible, and this is the information that people need to know. So how long have you been working with trauma? Has it been your whole career?
No, I actually started off hairdressing, would you believe, when I left school, and I guess I've always wanted to make people feel better, and so that's sort of where I started off. And then I realized that I spent most of my time counseling people rather than it wasn't just about the hair, so that's what interests me. And then I started teaching hairdressing, and it was in a political environment in polytechs, and I don't do politics very well. I'm very used to what you see is what you get, and I don't like the game playing stuff. And I ended up getting quite stressed and overwhelmed with it, and I had an asthma attack, which I'd never had. And one of my colleagues said to me, look, you need to go and see my friend who's a hypnotherapist. And I said, why on earth would I see a hypnotherapist for an asthma attack? And she said, no, she will teach you to manage stress. So I went to see her, and it was just phenomenal. It completely changed my life and how I looked at things and how I managed other people's bad behavior around me and how I managed my triggers. And it started from there. I was just fascinated. And so I started looking into it, did a few online courses, and then, really got into it. And here I am now full time and just love the results it gets.
So did you dive into working with people with trauma as soon as you started hypnotherapy, or did you kind of just have an all-encompassing version of it and then it narrowed into being the trauma person?
No, I started off with teaching people to be more calm and managing stress, and then I did get the smokers and the weight loss and everything. But behind all of that and the alcohol is emotional trauma. So people turn to alcohol to numb emotional pain. And it's the same with smoking. They always say, oh, it relaxes me. Well, it doesn't. It just gets them out of the office. It gets them an excuse to get outside and take deep breaths, even though there's nicotine going in as well, or whatever the other poisons are. So I realized that actually, no, the core of everything was trauma. And so I just started with anxiety, but then I don't advertise much. It's all on recommendation. And then more and more people were coming to me as the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. They tried counseling, they tried everything, and just weren't really getting anywhere. So I ended up getting more and more people with much more trauma behind them. And it all goes back to the resilience or lack of from trauma as a child and the triggers. And so I notice the triggers, and we find the triggers and we heal the triggers. And that's the core of all the trauma.
And isn't that fascinating? Because somebody who wants to quit smoking would never think that one of the reasons that they're doing that in the first place is because of something that's happened to them in their life, somewhere along that it was a trauma that's brought them to this place. I think that's the key, is people don't realize that things that they would consider life is a traumatic incident in their life. It's an anchor in their life or trigger point that from there changes everything.
Exactly. And the same with weight loss. And I say to people, you're emotionally eating. How many times are you eating when you're not hungry? And well, they say I do if I'm bored or if I'm stressed or if somebody annoys me. And I say, so why are you dealing with the diet? Let's look at the emotional triggers. And once you heal those, then food will just become something that you do just because you need to eat. It won't be your emotional baggage cover-up, like your comfort blanket is what I say. So you can have a comfort blanket as cigarettes, or a comfort blanket could be food, or whatever it is. We need to work out why you need that comfort blanket. And then once you can realize that you don't, then that's where the healing begins.
I've found that sometimes people will say, well, it's not a comfort blanket. I have chronic fatigue, or I have IBS, or I have that thing. And so for them, it's a difficulty that shows up. It's not a soothing thing or a comforting thing, but it's the same cause, the same root situation. It's just shifted and taken a left instead of a right. Do you work with people that show up and say, well, I'm really struggling with this?
Yes, I had someone with severe psoriasis, and she'd had it as far as she could remember, as long back as she could remember. And when we dug deep in that relaxed state, we found out that as a child, she didn't have much attention. She had two brothers that were very sporty, and so mum and dad were always running around for their sports, and she was just the one that tagged along. And the only time she got attention was when she'd fallen in some nettles or something and got covered in this rash, and her mum had sat her down and every day had stroked and put this cream on and paid attention. And then it was shortly after that that she got this psoriasis, in which she realized then that there was a secondary gain to having it. You know, it was the attention that she never had as a child. So once again, we picked up on that trigger. It eased a lot. And it's amazing how the physical stuff can be so easily attached to the emotional. And that's what we need to work with.
I love that. I've thought about it. I haven't worked with anyone with psoriasis yet, but I know that that's possible too. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because somebody would not make the connection of I have a rash to I can clear it by doing hypnosis. That doesn't seem like a leap that you make. And that's why I'm doing these podcasts and these things, put this information out there, is because if you think about it, the subconscious is already running everything in our body. It's balancing the hormones. It's beating our heart. It's doing everything. Why wouldn't you be able to change something there and change the physical?
I mean, the body's incredible, isn't it? I mean, it can heal so many things if we allow it to, but it's also a system that is telling us when there's dis-ease, when there's something that's wrong. And I can attest that from my own life. I only found out recently, I think it was October, I just went to the doctors, well, I went to the hospital with a really bad stomach pain and found out I had a cyst the size of a basketball that had 2.5 liters of fluid in it. And I wasn't even aware of it. And so I obviously needed surgery for it. But when I was sent home, I did lots of deep therapy work and found out that because it was on my ovary, there was things that had happened in my past that had affected that I just blocked and ignored and thought, just get on with it. You're fine. Just move on. And I needed to look at that again. And the next morning it actually ruptured, which was a bit of a worry. But I think the body was going, okay, we've dealt with that now. We can get rid of it. But it could have done it a better way. But I did get the surgery quicker. But again, it's dealing with that. And now I've had the all clear. There's nothing to worry about. So again, I believe that things that happen to me, often the way that I can then heal my clients, because if I've experienced it, I know what they've been through. I can understand at a deeper level and help them through it and let them know that, hey, look, you can come out of it. You don't have to suffer. And it may be a bit hard for half an hour to go and dive deep and look at what this root is, but you're actually not in it now. It's just a memory and you can let it go instead of burying it and then creating dis-ease within your body.
Right. And that's what it is. It is dis-ease. It's not an ease. The flow is not going in the way that it needs to go in your body and not working in the way that it's meant to. And if that's the only way that the mind can get your attention to say, we do need to clear this, we're not done with this, then that's what it does. And that just means, okay, it's time. And one of the things, I love that one of the things you talk about too is that you really bring the outside world into the influences, talking about the influences of life for us. And I think that is so important because so many times we're told, or you're told, or whoever, whatever the situation is, people are told, get over it, deal with it, move on, you're okay. You know, that's what you're expected to do, is to keep going. And it's crazy that we have all of that kind of bombarding us. And not to say a horrible thing about medication or anything like that either. It has its place, absolutely. I love our medical world in so many ways, but there are times when it's not just about, here, take this pill to feel better. Here, do this. It's going to fix you, because it's more of a math on things. It's kind of putting another layer over the issue. And instead, when we can go back and dig that little root up that's back there, it clears everything going forward. It's like magic.
I like to use an analogy of, especially with clients that suffer from panic attack and anxiety, I say to them, if you imagine you had a 7-year-old child and you said to them, I'm going out, and the 7-year-old goes, well, where are you going? And you go, well, it doesn't matter, I'm just going out, you'll be all right. And the 7-year-old goes, well, how long are you going to be? Doesn't matter how long I'm going to be, you'll be fine. Just get over it, just deal with it, I'm going out. Well, is that 7-year-old going to feel any better? Certainly not. But if you were to say to that 7-year-old, oh, look, it's okay, I'm going out, but I'm just going to be across the road by that lamppost, you'll be able to see me. If you get really scared, I can come back. And so when I deal with clients that, for instance, can't leave the house, I'll say to them, we'll just go to that lamppost and we'll say, if it's really, really scary and I can't cope, I'll come back after I get to the lamppost. But you'll find when you get to the lamppost, actually, I think I'm okay, I can probably go to the next lamppost. And so where they bury it and then say, I'm just not going to go, or I'm going to go and I don't care if you're scared, that's what creates the panic attack, because the subconscious mind cannot see a fire exit. You're jumping into the fire with no plan of, if the worst case scenario happens, how can I get out of it? And as soon as you spend the time to explain to that subconscious part that we're only going to do this and there is a way of getting out if things get traumatic, it calms, it allows you to do it. And it's just understanding. My whole philosophy with my therapy is teaching people how the subconscious mind works, and it's not your enemy, and just working with it.
No, it's actually quite the opposite. It's doing everything it knows how to do to keep you safe, which sometimes is not comfortable or easy or the right way to be doing it. But for whatever reason, that got programmed into it, and it's like a bus on a route or a train on tracks, and it's going to keep going in that direction. Even when you're like, hey, I want to go this other direction, and you're trying to make good changes in your life, it's like, nope, we're going to stay right here. We're doing this because this is the only way I know how to keep you safe. Until you go in, like you said, and give it more information and give it another way to say, we can do this. It's okay. And to go in, and maybe you need to find that little child that's still sitting back there scared and afraid, and it needs to be cleared from that difficult situation or reintegrated fully back into you so that it feels safe and welcome and being able to move forward. When you can do that, the world opens up. The new path arrives.
And often you don't know what that trigger is. I mean, I had a classic example of somebody brought their 12-year-old daughter to me who said that she'd started intermediate school, really excited to go. All her friends were going, got to the door of the classroom and had this absolute meltdown, panic attack, couldn't go. And so she took her home, thought, well, maybe because things are new, and, you know, she was fine when she got home, got dressed up, ready for school the next day, all excited. Same thing happened. And so she took her to see a therapist, counseling, went to the old school to see if there'd been any bullying, and there was nothing. She just didn't understand why she couldn't go, and she tried a few times. Anyway, she brought it to me. As I say, I'm always the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. There you go. Let's try hypnotherapy. And we just went into a very light self-hypnosis trance, and I asked the subconscious mind to take her back to any scenes that may be connected with why she couldn't go into this school, thinking that there would be some sort of bullying or something to do. And the 3 scenes she gave me were nothing to do with school. And I looked at her mum and just sort of shrugged my shoulders as though to say, well, I don't get it. These things, they weren't highly traumatic, but they were frightening for a child, but they weren't connected to school. So I said, tell me, I'm going to ask your subconscious mind a question now and let me know what the first thing that comes to your mind. What is the connection between these 3 scenes and this going to school? And she just said, the floor is blue. So, oh, okay. So the subconscious mind, because it couldn't connect these 3 scenes, decided that it must be the fact that the swimming pool floor had a blue concrete, the friend's house had a blue carpet, and this classroom had a blue floor, and it was the only thing it could get. So it just put her into this fight, flight, freeze because of the blue floor. So once we explained to the subconscious that actually the floor wasn't the issue, she went to school the next week.
Isn't that wonderful? And those little anchors that get put in, it might not make sense unbeknownst to us. But the subconscious picked up on the connection, like you said, during those difficult situations where she had what she would consider trauma. And the one thing that was there in that same feeling of was the blue floor, and said, okay, we don't want you to feel like that. We're going to avoid blue floors. We're going to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, keeping you safe. It's keeping you safe. And that sounds ridiculous, but it's true. It happens all the time. And people wonder why they have fears of buttons or bananas or whatever it is. It's because somewhere something happened and that was the connection that got made.
As crazy as it sounds, yeah.
And I love that. And actually that term, I love the term. I never heard that, but it's absolutely true. I always say I'm the last ditch effort. It's the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. That's true. You know, the last stop. It's like, well, I've tried everything else, so I'm here. And I would love for us to get to be the first stop where they come in and we clear everything. And then they're like, oh my goodness, I can go on with life and feel good. And that's my goal. That's why I do these as well, is to help people know that we really shouldn't be the last ditch effort, because when you go to the mind first, all the changes happen from there. And there's a place for all the things that are out there depending on where you're at. But if you really, really need to make a change quick, easy, and effectively, I'm finding hypnosis to be that really amazing stopping place.
Yeah.
Or starting place, I should say. First stop to start your new life.
And a lot of people, especially when they suffer from anxiety, are frightened that with coming to a hypnotherapist, you're going to take control of their mind. And I explain to them that actually what I do and what most hypnotherapists do, the difference between hypnosis and hypnotherapy, is that we give you back control of your mind. So the idea is that we teach you to control the programs that other people have placed in your mind, that systems and experiences have placed in your mind. I teach you to take back control rather than their belief that hypnosis is where another person takes control. So it's understanding that with hypnotherapy, we are actually teaching you how the mind works and giving you the tools and the power to not allow other people to program you and to delete and remove the programs that aren't helpful to you.
Yeah, I've heard that term. I tend to use the word hypnosis, and I'm a hypnotist, but I frame it under the way that you say hypnotherapy. But you're very, very on point with that. I often hear people talk about kind of de-hypnotizing people out of the influence of everything else, out of the influence of the world, and even the people close to them who may be trying to be helpful, but have constantly said something that is not going well in this person's world. I actually talked to somebody the other day, and he was telling me about his journey and the difficulties he had had. And it was so interesting because it's the crab in the bucket kind of mentality that comes into play so often. And there's support groups and there's all these things out there. But what was happening for him was he was in a group for OCD. And he said, I would see these people sharing about their successes and, oh my gosh, I think it's getting better. I'm feeling like I'm moving forward. And inevitably someone would come in and say, yes, but don't think that you are ever going to be rid of this, or don't think that you can get away from it. You have to know that this is something you're going to have forever. And he said, I had to leave that group because I didn't think that way. And I knew that I wasn't going to have this forever. And I just knew that was wrong. And I couldn't take them pulling everybody down from the successes that they were having. And I think that's such a valid thing that goes on, unfortunately, in our world. Through so many things, through TV, through social media, through all of the things that we turn to, it's an influence, and it's telling us, it's hypnotizing us. And so as a hypnotherapist, in my terms, there's a little bit something different. I also call myself a mindset mentor. That's the fun one. But we go in and we do show them. You choose your path. You choose the programming that you want in your mind. You get to choose that. You get to go where you want to go in this lifetime. And nobody gets to take that away from you. People get angry sometimes when you say you're in control of you. You are in control of your happiness, your life. They're like, no, this is happening and this is happening and everything around me is happening. And I'm like, I understand. However, you can be okay even when the world is falling apart around you. You can be okay. I think it's hard for people to understand that sometimes. Do you find that in the beginning and the switch to after you work with them?
Yeah, well, I'd say to them, so are we going to choose to be a victim or a survivor? What do you want? Wallow in the victim for a little while, but, make it short term and then come out as a survivor. And also people that suffer from depression, I often find they need a purpose in life. And I say to them, you haven't suffered this depression for nothing. If you decide to be a survivor, you can then help other people that suffer from depression because you've been there and you know the way out. So don't allow that part of you to not be used for some good. And then that gives you a reason that actually I didn't suffer unnecessarily. I suffered because now I can help other people.
Oh my goodness. I think I have experienced that more times than I want to in my life. But it was a very definite thing that I found. I had long COVID, still have some issues actually, but I'm so much better and so much better than so many people out there. But going through that experience, I found I understood chronic things a little bit better. I understood what it was like to literally not have the energy to go from one room to another, to be upset with yourself, with your body, not understand what's happening, having to try to justify or have someone else outside of you understand what was going on. Thank the world, thank the universe for the support that I had in my family and friends, because they never questioned it. They just knew that whatever was happening, I was being truthful, I was being honest, so I wasn't just a lump laying around feeling sorry for myself, which some people experience, and I feel horrible that they experience that in life. But going through that experience changed my view of so many things, and it was not fun, and I hope never to experience it again, ever.
But now you know how someone feels when you just say, oh, if you're tired, just get up and you'll be all right. But, you actually know what it's like to be completely shut down by your subconscious and your body. And that's what it does. And I say to people with it's fight, flight or freeze, and your freeze is your depression. It just shuts you down. And your flight is I'm out of here. And you just keep running away from everything, keep moving house, keep changing relationships. You can't stay in one place. And then your fight is obviously anger. And they are all emotional based on some form of trauma. And once you realize that and you can get to the root of it, it's like a game of Jenga. Somebody once said to me a real compliment. They said, I like to sort of have an analogy of you like a dentist. And I went, oh, please don't. I can't stand the dentist. And she said, no, with some of the therapies I've had, it's like a fill-in. They just top you up and just give you a fill-in. She said, you are a root canal. She said, you take that bottom root out and you sort the whole problem from So I guess it was a nice thing to say in a way.
It's like, oh yeah, nobody wants a root canal, but sometimes they're necessary. And then it was gone and there's no more pain. And that's a good analogy, unfortunately. Yeah. But yeah, it's so interesting. I was just starting on my journey when I was sick, and I never thought to turn to hypnotherapy at that moment, but I would definitely in that situation be doing all the things at that subconscious level to heal that and to work with my body in the way of moving forward. So that's amazing. I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for inviting me. It was great.
I want to let you know that everything's going to be in the show notes, but if you don't mind taking a moment to let people know where they can connect with you and find that ambulance at the bottom of the cliff and be able to work with you or just come connect with you if that's what they need to do right now.
So my website is anxietynomore.world. I work over Zoom, but also face-to-face, but I'm in Tauranga in New Zealand. So because I work with such a large array, a lot of it is over Zoom. And some people worry about Zoom that it might jump out and they're going to be left in this hypnotic state. But if we are working online, I always tell the subconscious mind, if we get disconnected after 1 minute, you will automatically come out of it and you'll be able to reconnect and we can carry on with the session. So if anybody's got any concerns about that, it's not an issue at all. My email address is anxietynomorenz@protonmail.com. So you can contact me there, but all my details are on my website, which is anxietynomore.world. So yeah, I'd love to catch up with people and just help them. It's funny, I was taking the dogs for a walk yesterday, just down the beach, and this lady was sat just on a bench and her dog and my dog was playing together. And I very much believe in not coincidences, but if you get a feeling about something, go with it. And I just had this feeling I needed to just go over and say hi and So we started speaking, and then she suddenly came out that she'd just come out of a narcissistic relationship and her daughters were suffering. And so we just sat down and we just chatted for an hour, and I gave her some tips on how to manage it and how to help her daughters, and told her how amazing she was and how strong she was to actually leave the relationship, because the easy thing to do was to stay. So again, just having that conversation hopefully gave her the strength to carry on. And with anybody, if you find yourself sat next to someone, actually just start up a conversation, because they may well be there for a reason. It's not just a coincidence that you suddenly have an affinity to talk to someone. Just do it.
I believe that too. I don't believe in coincidence. So I know that there's things that are, especially when we're working towards stuff, when we're wanting the connections and we're wanting those things. And it might not be us. It might be them. But if we're the one that's like, ooh, I should maybe say hi. If they don't respond, that's okay. You did your part. It's up to them to go from there. Thank you again for being here with me. I so appreciate it.
No worries. Lovely to speak to you.
All right, Change Gang. I hope you go off into the week better for having listened to this conversation. And I hope that you go connect with Kymberley. And I hope that you have a wonderful week ahead. Ciao. I hope today's episode was interesting and helpful to you in some way. If so, find someone to share it with. Maybe it will help them too. If you'd like to know more about anything discussed here today, you can find all the places to connect with me and the guest speakers in the show notes. Or go to lauraordile.com, LauraOrdile.com, and you can reach out to me there. Until next time, ask when you need help, be kind to yourself, and have a happy day.